Welcome to Writers Not Writing, a show where I interview authors about the ways they procrastinate and highlight artists who are using their voices to push back against fascism. I'm Benjamin Gorman, your friendly author in exile, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug does his best to try to make me sound better. Welcome to Writers Not Writing. You're going to enjoy today's show. And if you want a little more, become a patron of my Patreon, and you'll get access to an ad-free version of the show with a bonus segment with each interviewee. Even free members get that, but let's keep that a secret.
If I take my time.
Hail and well met readers and reviewers. We are very excited about today's show. I'm Benjamin Gorman.
I'm Chrys Gorman.
And the reason we have co-hosts is we are both very excited to get to interview author E.K. Wise. E.K. Wise is endlessly curious about cultural history and geology developed in her youth after living abroad and traveling internationally. She's enticed by multicultural cuisine and will sample almost any food once. When not creating stories, she's likely wrangling teenagers, sweating on her stationary bike, reading or studying cool rocks and minerals. Wise passionately advocates for learning evaluation, and she has 3 of her 4 kiddos, and maybe the dog, have ADHD. She's earned degrees in psychology and clinical social work and lives with her family in Southern California. Before raising children, Wise worked as a U.S. Navy development specialist for the Fleet and Family Support Program. She prepared sailors, spouses/partners, and children for Navy development and helped with reunion preparation afterwards. She gave presentations on ships as large as aircraft carriers and as small as submarines. Sometimes those groups reached as large as 5,000 people. Her favorite and most rewarding aspect of the job was flying out to the ships and giving her presentations to the sailors as they journeyed home. Flying on Navy helicopters to the ships was a fun experience. And her book, Keepers of the Rock, The Debris Rising, is both her first novel and it's the first in a series. So welcome. We are very excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure, and I'm really excited.
Let's jump right in.
Sure.
I understand that you decided to have one of your young adult characters be neurodivergent. They have ADHD inattentive type. Why was this so important to you?
Well, as stated in the introduction, 3 of my 4 kids and I myself, and truly our Bernedoodle puppy, may have ADHD inattentive type. And I did, oh, yay. I didn't honestly set out to have a character. I didn't, as I was developing it, didn't really think, okay, I'm going to have one character who's going to be, have these considerations. But then as I was writing this particular character, I realized, oh, she has similar characteristics to my daughters and to me. And so, you know what? No, I'm leaning into it all the way. And so I really kind of developed that. And I thought it was also very important, I think, especially with any fiction, but for young adult and young adult fantasy, I think it's a great avenue to be able to explore those issues. And I think it's so very, very important to help anybody, for anybody who might have a learning difference. And I say learning difference. I know it's ADHD, D being disorder, but I don't think of it that way. I think it's very important to consider a difference because we all learn differently. And if somebody has, let's say, diabetes or some other condition, then you address it to make them feel healthier. This is very much the same thing. Yeah. So, and so getting back to that, I wanted very much to lean into that. And particularly ADHD inattentive type is often kind of the ones that gets missed in the classroom. It got missed for me. And I was a psychology major. So literally in college in a psychology department, and not a single one of the professors thought that, oh, maybe this really high intense student might be having a learning difference. It didn't get caught. We lived in Washington, D.C. when I was growing up. And because schools were really not very good at that time, we wound up having to go into private high schools. And coming from London, where we had been educated for 3 years, I had to go get like an intelligence test for the school to decide that they were going to admit me, which they wound up doing. But even then, with obviously a psychologist taking, I was taking the what is it, the WACE R
Yeah.
test for kids, and I didn't get caught then. Nobody even then thought, oh, well, maybe she. So many places it's been missed because those kids, we just kind of daydream. And we'll even be looking at the teacher and just thinking about something else. And my oldest son would be in English class. He would tell us this years later, yeah, I was thinking physics problems.
Yeah.
And I would like take three-dimensional shapes and turn them in my head. And he's a software developer now, so he does lots of coding, but he would just completely check out. And all the teachers were like, oh, but he's such a polite young man. And I know he's trying. And so oftentimes, so I think it's very important to help our kids and adults, if they need it, to get evaluated and get the help that they need, because it can really affect a kid's self-esteem,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
it can wind up causing a self-fulfilling prophecy if a teacher thinks that they're just not that bright, if a parent thinks that, oh, just, they're trying hard, but this is, school is just not for them, and we'll figure out some kind of avenue. And they don't find success because they're not getting evaluated and getting that help that they need. So anyway, and the other part of that is, in some ways, and I know my kids feel this way, having a learning difference can kind of be like a little individual superpower.
Mhm.
With oftentimes people with ADD can really hyper focus and get a lot done. I know for my son, who's the software coder, oh my gosh, being able to do that for hours and hours and do a really good job at it, you really have to pay attention and for long periods of time, and he's able to do that really, really well.
Yeah.
And we're also very creative, hence writer. So I just feel like it's important to get evaluated, and let's love these kids no matter what type of difference they have, and help them exceed and excel, because they have so much to offer the world.
Yeah. Well, and I think that kind of representation in a novel that is organic, where it's, I didn't set out to, tell this story in this way. This is my lived experience, and this is the way the characters came to me, and this feels natural in the story, and yet that representation is so important for readers, to say, oh, I saw myself in this book. I think it's really, really vital. And we've talked a lot about how ADHD, the lack of diagnoses is often, especially for that inattentive type, is often gendered.
Yeah.
So it's, oh, she is not running around the playground hitting other kids, therefore everything's fine.
Yeah.
And not recognizing the hyperactivity is happening inside the brain rather
Yeah,
than physically, and so it doesn't get the attention it deserves.
absolutely,
Well, and I mean,
absolutely.
I still, not only is it important for the representation to exist within the literature, within the books, but you speaking about it,
Yeah.
authors speaking about it, adults speaking about it. Children need to see adults in positions that they may one day want to
Yeah.
attain that are successful with ADHD, because you tend to grow up with this sense of inadequacy that comes with it, the sense of kind of um, just inherent failure around it. A lot of kids, particularly kids that have not been diagnosed and don't understand why, but are just being seen as they are failing in this thing.
Yeah, my brother, who was diagnosed as an adult, was often told as a kid, oh, oh, school's just not for you,
Hmm.
without the recognition that that was a problem with the school,
Yeah.
not the learner. And it wasn't until as an adult he was like, oh, the school's failed me, not the other way around. But he was made to feel like, oh, school's just not your bag.
Well, and that
You know,
goes into how we educate children, particularly in America. It's conformity. And if there's something that people with ADHD don't deal with well, it's conformity and uniformity and routine, and that sense of sameness with everybody else. It's a hard thing for us to learn to mimic. A lot of kids can learn to mimic it as when they are young.
yeah. Well, and that brings
And then
us
that
to
causes their own, an entirely different set of issues as you get older.
Yeah, well, and that brings us to our next question. So, in this era of rising kind of authoritarian pressure to conform, what is one way that you have been pushing back against this fascist uprising we are seeing?
So in my novel, as these characters were just kind of coming to me, um, I realized that they were all centered around our our geological forces in nature and sustainability and our environment and our world. Protecting our world is so important to me. And as I was writing the book, I have 4 kids right now, ages 17 to 26, and they are very vocal and very concerned and sometimes really mad. And they're not mad at my husband and I per se, or are necessarily our generation, but with previous adults in general, that we're in the situation that we are in and not enough has been done. And so I really wanted to highlight that in this book and really address it head on, but in a fun,
Yeah.
fantasy realm. But it's in our modern world. We are in the modern world in my book in the time that we're currently living in, as opposed to a different, country or different, I wanted to keep it on Earth. And so that was really important to me. And all the characters, whether it's the abilities that the protagonists and the antagonists have, are centered around geological phenomenon like earthquakes and volcanoes and rocks, minerals, elements of the periodic table. I have a periodic table of elements in the book so that people can reference it and
Nice.
discuss that a lot. And also in my social media, I address that. So I think it's so important if we all just do tiny little things on a daily basis and pay attention and take care of our incredible Earth, which is such an amazing place to live. We're so blessed, and we all just need to steward it so it can be here, for many other generations, and for all the wonderful animals and flora and fauna and so forth. So that's really important to me.
I don't know if you've seen this research. I totally agree. And one of the things that I find compelling, there's some good research that programs like recycling in and of themselves don't make a difference, but participating in recycling changes you. And
Mm.
if you then engage on a weekly basis in this routine of separating your trash or whatever, it will then affect your voting habits. It will affect your purchasing habits. And those things, when you say small things, the small things change us, and then we change our actions in the world. And I really do, that does give me hope.
It's important that you said that, because I remember you mentioning that at another one of your other podcasts. And I think that's so important. And I will say, having kids 17 to 26, a lot of times they would come over to our house, either after prom or whatever. And it would give me so much hope listening to them, especially when they were graduating from high school, and what their dreams are and what they want to do. And they're all very, very concerned. They're all very mindful and definitely want to participate and be involved in making the world better. So that gives me a little hope as well.
Yeah.
So much of the strategy of the right-wing machine is to overwhelm us with information and misinformation until we can't figure out what to pay attention to anymore. What's something you wish more people were paying attention to right now?
Definitely validating our sources when we're looking at news. Is it, where did it come from? And also corroborating, looking in other places, like, okay, I heard this story, it seems really alarming. I should make sure that what I'm hearing is really valid, or is it something that's been manipulated, or so forth. And actually in this story, it's so important to me that I have right at the beginning, I have footnotes in the book, I should say that. So I bring up science and I bring up history, really fun scientific facts and history, because it's a book that I say that anyone from 11 to 100 can read. And it's, exciting and adventurous. But I wanted to make sure that I put in fun science and historical facts, but I also wanted them to be able to get more information. So if they read about, something about a volcano, they can go and find out more information, because I just love to learn. I think learning, no matter what age you are, learning new stuff is really cool. And so I don't know if you can see this little owl that my oldest son created for me. It's an image, and his name is Augie, which is also the name of the dog, but that came after. the Augie in the book, and he stands for the advancement of unbiased global intellectual exploration. So that's why that's his name. So the idea being that when you find facts in the book or facts anywhere else, you are looking for unbiased, validated information, whether it's a passion that you have for something you want to learn about or something you find in the news that's alarming to you. We all need to really check and make sure that, because oftentimes, we go on the internet and it's just free for all. And it's so hard to know what's real, what's not real.
I saw a video today that somebody had put up, and this was entirely well-intentioned. They wanted to just make kind of a spoof video. And so they used AI to make a spoof video that is so similar to something that is plausible that then I think somebody who's scrolling through is going to go, I saw that. That took place. And so, kind of a heads up to satirists. If you make your satire look so real that people can't tell the truth, you can actually participate inadvertently in misinformation. I think satire that is clearly, don't use AI. Don't try and make it look so realistic. It'll actually be more evocative if you paint it like a human being. You draw your cartoon. But if you make it look real, yeah, it is getting progressively more challenging to even distinguish what was intended to be satire. It takes we need Augie. We need to be careful.
And especially that's why I wanted to put that in there for young people as well. And I know our teachers, the teachers my kids had, worked really hard when they were going, had to write a research paper, teaching them, okay, you can get your sources online, but you have to validate them and where you're getting them from and so forth. It makes me sad a little bit because only my eldest kid in elementary school was actually told to look in the library. I'm like, what about those wonderful resource books that we have? And the kids actually know how to...
and
Right.
I saw a great post a few days ago from a teacher who said he got tired of his students turning in AI homework, AI essays.
Mhm.
So he actually assigned a topic and had his students have AI write the essay. And then their assignment was to go through the AI essay and correct everything that was wrong.
Yes.
And he was like, after the class had done that, they actually realized, oh, AI is actually incredibly accurate. We shouldn't be using this for our homework anymore.
When I was a high school English teacher, one of the things I would do to kind of combat that is I would have my students, I was teaching them process. And so I would have them write a paragraph at a time, handwritten. And that way, if a student said, oh, here is my completed essay that, is not, show me your work. And, if there was no handwritten portion, I don't know that you wrote this.
The ADHD kids probably didn't like you for that very much.
Like that. And actually, my students who were diagnosed could type it. But again, they had to do it in class in front of me, a paragraph, and turn it in a paragraph at a time so that I could see they were going through this process. I think there's a debate already. I know, folks saying, oh, AI can be this learning tool. And the research does not support that. The brain just kind of goes, somebody else will do the work.
We got to think of all the people that it's pulling that information from. There are a lot of people that it's pulling information from that I don't want to hear from.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
It was interesting. My sophomore year of high school, I still remember this teacher's name, Mrs. Wilson. And literally there were 2 papers that we could actually do at home the entire year. Yeah. Every other time let's say we were reading Macbeth, we would go into class, we would get our prompt, you'd have your book, and you had to do your outline and write the paper right there in class.
I had that teacher too.
Yes. Maybe you had the same teacher.
Yeah.
Mrs. Osterlin. I remember her.
Healthy. For one thing, homework is classist. I mean, this is something that teachers struggle with. But if you presume students will go home and do their work, and that's some kind of sign that they are better students, you are presuming they have a household where that is going to be supported and a space to do that in, that they don't have a job after school, all these other things. If we limit the work to school time, then we're really evaluating the students and not evaluating the parents and the life situation that the kids are in. And so I try to avoid homework for that very reason. It's got a classist aspect. And also, it lends itself to this very American sense that, like, every job you should go home and continue to work for free. Like, no, you work at work when you're being paid to work. Teachers are particularly bad about this because our line of work doesn't operate in that way. But I tried to encourage my students, you work when you're on the clock, but also it was a way to avoid, oh yeah, you just go home and have the AI program do that. Nope, that's not an option in my room. So,
And
um,
ultimately, it kind of concerning because if that's what, kids are being allowed to do because we're not changing the system in a way, the classrooms in a way that's going to promote good learning,
right.
then when they're done with their education, what have they,
That's
what are these future kids going to be able to do in the workforce,
They have prepared themselves to be replaceable.
we still operate our educational system on a very neurotypical style.
The factory
Yes.
model.
And
Yeah.
that's why there's such a high statistic number of young adults that are graduating high school, going to college as A students, coming out of high school as A students, going to college, and then figuring out they're failing out and then being diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah.
It's this overwhelming number of people that are discovering this because we structure high school in such a way that it doesn't really,
Yeah.
like, we're preparing you for college. You're gonna have to have this done. You're
I'm
gonna have to
smiling.
show up at your 8 a.m. class. You're gonna have to. No, none of that is accurate.
Right. My son joked in his salutatorian speech that he had managed to graduate while being functionally illiterate and having a dad who was an English teacher, which got a good laugh. But he messaged me today and he's reading Cormac McCarthy's The Road while at work. So he is not I want it on the record, folks who listen to the podcast, my son is not actually illiterate. He is reading excellent literature on his own time.
I mean, my brother is, and he graduated
Yeah. Yeah.
barely.
Barely.
But I also come from football was everything, and so
Yeah. So all this can be kind of dour and,
Yeah.
depressing. What has been something that's been a healthy way for you to find distraction lately?
Oh, well, anytime if I'm feeling stressed, I will say the first thing I generally go to is finding a great romance novel that I can delve into. I feel like it really helps, gives us a little dopamine hit and makes us feel like we can wake up the next day and do good work, whatever that may be, and sort of have a positive outlook. And it really, really bothers me when I hear people say negative things about romance because it's so
Yes.
important. And I really think a really good writer, actually, any writer who really wants to improve their writing should read romance
Yeah.
because they really are the best at being able to explore like inner angst and turmoil and love. And they're wonderful.
Ben's about to call me out on
We have-
my
no, we have-
deepest
we have
secret,
talked
my
about this all the
shameful
time.
secret.
Presents it as though it's shameful, and I'm always having to say to her. So she reads Pride and Prejudice fanfic a lot, and I always have to say to her,
Favorite novel
Yes.
of all
It's-
time.
"Yep,
It's my favorite novel. I have a Kindle Unlimited yearly subscription that I paid like $5 for when I was in school. It automatically renews, and I can read an unlimited number of Pride and Prejudice
variations."
variations.
Which
It
is
sounds so much
fine.
better when you call them variations
And so I'm
instead of
always having to
fanfic.
say to her, there is no such thing as a guilty pleasure. We don't feel guilt
It's
for
it's
what you
my
read.
it's my guilty pleasure. I find comfort in knowing the story. It's like
Mhm.
rewatching your favorite TV show.
Yeah, it's
There, particularly for somebody with ADHD, with anxiety, there's comfort in knowing what is coming. I know the story,
and
but
yes,
there's
the
that
variation.
little bit of novelty within the twist that keeps I know who the characters are going to
I
be. I
always
know
say to
who
her, Shakespeare only wrote
the
fanfic.
yeah.
As far as we know, there may be one play, Merry Wives of Windsor, that was original. Everything else was fanfic. That's all he ever did. There's nothing wrong with fanfic. So if you are a listener out there who reads fanfic, don't feel guilty for reading fanfic. One of my novels is a rewrite of Shakespeare's The Tempest.
Yeah.
It's arguably fan fiction of The Tempest. Like, that's fine, and this, I mentioned my son's reading The Road. Read a romance novel. Don't just read The Road. The Road is grim.
Well, and
there's no dopamine in The Road.
I was
Read
about
a
to
romance
say,
novel.
I was about to say, I don't. Romance was the one genre that I never really got into, but then I realized I've read
Well, and that's the other.
all of Thomas Hardy, Jane Eyre,
Yes.
Austen.
Yep.
If it's not romance, what would you call
Well,
it?
and it's very much like with speculative fiction, like what you've been writing. There's this real kind of unfair and incorrect highbrow lowbrow distinction.
Because
where,
romance is for women.
I dated this woman one time who
And it
said,
has an
I mentioned that I
inherent-
write science fiction, and she's like, I don't read science
Yeah.
fiction. And then we were looking through her bookshelf, and she's got Margaret Atwood, and she's got, George Orwell. And I'm like, you read a lot of science fiction. And she's like, oh, but I don't think of these as science fiction. I think of these as classics. And I'm like,
Right.
That's the
so,
other that's the other side of the coin.
yeah.
That's the other side of the coin. Romance is seen as inherently feminine, therefore negative. Science fiction.
Until it rises to a certain level of recognition, and then people say now it's suddenly not romance.
Exactly.
Now it's Pride and Prejudice. Well, it's
Yep.
absolutely a romance. Yeah. So there's no shade to romance writers, and you're right. Everybody who writes in any genre, if you're going to have relationships in your books, and you ought to have you have to have some kind of relationships unless you're writing a book with one character. Read romance authors. They can teach you a thing or two about how to describe the way people interact. So that, yeah, I think that's good writing advice for everyone.
Yeah, I think so.
So, um, it is exciting to me to have a storyteller on the show because we've been doing this thing called the side quest, where we are telling
Yes.
a story
I've been up
and
to date. I hope I'm up
yes,
to date on the
yes.
side quest. It's very interesting, and
Yes,
I'm
so this is kind of a
excited.
bit of an improv game. It's set in this fantasy world, and I'm writing a novel in this world, but the story's set very far away. It's a side quest. It's a side story about a young girl. She's 11 years old. She is Zill is this plucky, brave, fierce, and also unwise. She's 11, kind of gets herself into trouble sometimes, and she has run away from home, and she's running away to go to where her grandmother and aunt live on the other side of the continent. And she doesn't have a real sense of how far that is or how dangerous that is when she leaves. And she sneaks into a cart with a person, a non-binary person, Jesmar, who's a merchant, and they were traveling across the country, and they so far have run into a couple of their characters who are inventors, Wellfill, and I got to get all the names, and Banal. And along their adventure, most recently, they went down as part of Jesmar's trading and met with another species, the Deep Folk. And the Deep Folk revealed to them that something is deeply wrong with this world. Something that their species, the Stoneskins, are doing is messing with the magic. And so they've been kind of tasked to spread the word, but they're not authority figures in any way. And so their thinking is we're just going to continue on our path, Jesmar's normal trading route. We'll go to the next town and we'll tell the mayor. And we've arrived at that place where they tried to tell people in town, and people in town did not respond well. And so Zill kind of runs off on her own, and the adults are following her, and they're off to see Mayor Henkergel is the mayor of this small town. So now I put it to you, what happens when Zill runs off to see Mayor Henkergel?
Mm. Well, as they're journeying along, and being an 11-year-old, sometimes kids not having all the burden of reality as an adult and working and taking care of others, you can be a little more observant and sort of really see what's going on. So she kind of hears in the background as the mayor's house is approaching, there's a little bit of yelling from the inside of the house. And she's making an assumption because she's starting to see these characters that there's this other, maybe slightly older child who's running out of the house, and what appears to be this child's mother, who is telling them to come back into the house because they have to finish their education. And so, without us being aware of it, the mayor, who, is sort of elevated in his society because of his job, is very concerned that his children are properly educated.
Mm.
And that job has fallen to his partner. And the partner is taking it very seriously. And this kid is just a little sick of it. So they're trying to escape. And Zill notices this child escape. And so Zill decides, you know what? As opposed to just running right to the mayor, to the heart of it, I'm not so sure that that's the best way to go about it. So I think we should divide up. I'm going to go chase down this child who is the mayor's kiddo and talk to them, because maybe if I approach the kid and tell them what's going on, they will be more able to listen and be willing. And then you guys, the other characters, should not just go directly to the mayor, because once you go to the mayor, if the mayor doesn't like what you're saying, you're kind of cut off. That's like kind of the end. And then he may send people after you and run you out of town because you're threatening the existence of the government. So why don't you do I'm a DC girl, by the way. I grew up in DC. My parents worked for the federal government. So let's go to the bureaucrats.
Mm.
Why don't we have somebody go to like the simplest, the lowest level job and talk to them, and then somebody can kind of approach the mid level.
Well,
Because
and
really,
for the mid-level, this society is very class stratified, and the scribes are quite near the top. And it's very possible that the mayor's partner is a scribe. And the two members of the party who are the inventors would also be scribes. And so maybe they approach the mayor's partner. And from, growing up in DC, sometimes it's who you know. And so if you can, have a conversation with the mayor's spouse, and then the mayor's spouse can go inside and say, you really ought to listen to these people. So I could totally imagine Banel and Wellfill going to the teacher, who's also the parent, and saying, we need to talk to you about talking to the mayor. Meanwhile, Zill is talking to the child. I love this. This is great. So Zill goes to talk to the child. I think I love characters who are children. I think they need to be recognized more as agents in our literature. So Zill goes to see this kid, and tell us about who is this kid and what is this kid like?
oh, you're asking me.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh,
This
what is
one's
the
on you.
kid like? Um,
I'm not the writer of the group.
You feel free to
I
get
No,
that
no.
if you want to tweak it. Yeah,
No,
and change the
no, no.
yeah,
direction.
I think the kid is definitely frustrated with the constant education, because it's really a lot of pressure, and they want to go out and explore more. And they've been told constantly about these terrors, and they have to be careful at night, and we have to stay inside, and your father is the mayor, and therefore you have to uphold the way the family, and maybe you'll be a scribe one day. And they're just kind of tired of it. Like, you know
And
what? I
Zill
just
would be
want to
the
figure out
opposite.
who
I can
I am.
imagine Zill really appealing because Zill here is this kid who's the wild adventurer who's always running away and doing dangerous things and wants to be out in nature even when she shouldn't be. And she's now traveling across the country. I think that other kid's going to go, I want to be you. And Zill's going, I need your help. And so I could see that connection. So how old is this other kid? Zill's 11. Would this kid be older, younger? What,
Maybe let's put this kiddo around 13,
okay,
between
so a
13.
little bit older than Zill, which that is that cool thing where, an 11-year-old immediately thinks a 13-year-old is cool. Meanwhile, the
Mhm.
13-year-old is looking at Zill and going, you get to live a freer life than I do. You're cool. So I could see an instant kind of connection there. Now, this world has four genders, or at least everyone is pushed into four genders. So we've got Haman, women, so men, women, Haman, women, and then Zaman and Timon. And Zaman are kind of ace and very gender neutral kind of presenting, and then Timon are like very sexualized and in terms of the way that they present themselves. And so this kid at 13 is at that age where they're kind of figuring out how they're going to present. So what gender should this kid be?
I would say maybe at this point, the one where you said it's sort of middle.
Okay, so Zaman.
Because they're just kind of there, at that age, you may sort of internally know where you think you're going, but you're still trying to figure yourself out.
Yeah.
And we need to give them space to be able to explore that and be able to decide that as they go along. Like,
Yeah.
maybe I'm definitively one way or the other, but I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to be learning all this intellectual stuff anyway. So why don't I just organically let that come to me when I'm ready for it?
So the way that the Zaman present so that everybody understands their gender on site is the Stoneskins don't have hair, but they grow kind of a corally, hair where we would grow hair, and the Zaman polish all theirs off. So this kid is going to be totally clean shaven, and so Zill right away is going to go, okay, here is this 13-year-old Zaman kid, and that's just accepted. As long as people fall into the four, one of the things that I'm trying to play with in the book is to recognize that so many things in our society are arbitrary and could be different, and yet when they are culturally determined, they can still be oppressive. So even if there were four genders, if you shove people into four, it's not enough, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, but Zill, who identifies, and has always kind of known herself as female, uh, she sees this kid right away. She knows here's this 13-year-old Zaman kid. How do they kind of interact at first? What is their meeting like?
Hmm. I think that Zill will be really curious. I mean, because here's this child who has had parents that are very, very concerned about their upbringing and have been there always, as opposed to her dad, who, well, he had to leave because he had to go fight. And she's with this person who's helping her out, who's been staying and supposed to be help her education. So she's there, but clearly, not it's not her child. So she's not as emotionally invested. And I think that's one of the reasons Zill left, is because you kind of could feel that. And to know that you're well loved and cared for is very appealing when you don't necessarily have that, and you're excited about your adventures. But it's at that age, it's really nice to know that there's a protective kind of overarching safety net. And so right now that's sort of just cobbled together with this people that she's traveling with, which I think can be definitely a good thing. She feels safe with them, obviously, but to see that really constructed safety net that's kind of solid in some ways may be appealing. And in some ways you might think, wow, that could be really, maybe I am happy with the way things are for me. I'm not, so maybe she's kind of wondering about it.
Well, and at 11, it might be confusing because she didn't have, her mother passed before she has any memory of her. And so to see somebody running away from their mother and she's gone, she's always, her father dearly loved and misses her mother. And so why is this other person running away from a mother figure? I have always longed for that, right? And I could imagine that being very confusing to kind of go, I've created this found family for myself. She's only known them very briefly, but she had an adoptive parent who was taking care of her after her father's absence, who was caring for her well, and she ran away, and now she's going, wait, this person's got a mom who wants to be in their life, and they're running away. So trying to maybe understand, oh, family can still be constraining and uncomfortable, and sometimes you need some space from them. Could be a good thing for her to kind of see, maybe to ask about, why are you running away from your mom? And then the older kid is going, you know, she won't leave me alone, and I don't want to become a scribe. That's not my thing, and so I think that could be really interesting. So let's leave them in conversation and hop back over to Banel and Wellfill, the other scribes. They are inventors, and they are now communicating with Mom. And how do they kind of intercept Mom? And how does Mom, the scribe, interact with these two guys who show up and are like, hold on, can we talk to you while your kids just run away?
I imagine she's going to be very distracted and sort of thinking, excuse me, I've got to take care of this kid. But there's something about the way that they're approaching her where there's like a longing and a sense of real concern. And so she is picking up on that and realizes, okay, I know my kid is going to be okay. It's daylight. She's, she or he, that they are running off
Yeah.
and probably just need a break. And so she's an understanding sort of mother. So she's going to give her kiddo a couple of minutes to cool down so that they can, because even if she got her back right away, then they wouldn't be able to do any good work anyway. So she notices them and decides that, okay, they're scribes. I can sense that they're
Yeah, there'd be that kind of
obviously
mutual, oh, okay, these are
tempo,
my
like,
people.
okay,
Yeah.
I can speak to these people and they're not threatening. They're not acting as if they're going to come and attack us. So she's willing to listen and have an open mind. And being someone who's very concerned because she has a child, she wants to make sure that the terrors aren't going to be coming and affecting the family or the town. So if there is something that she needs to know, she wants to know because she likes to know everything. And what hasn't been mentioned is she's a bit of a gossiper.
Mm.
When she has some free time, she likes to talk to the other people around the town and figure out what's going on. And because she's sort of in this little bubble, because her husband is the mayor, she wants to get out. Think of sort of like Meet Me in St. Louis, the mayor's wife. She likes to go out with her little busybodies and hear whatever's going on. So she gets a little freedom that way. And then if she chooses, she will let the mayor know certain things that she's hearing about that she thinks might be important. And this is where she feels like she has her power in the relationship, is holding on to these juicy things and seeing, okay, well, maybe this will be helpful for him and I need XYZ in return if I'm going to give him this juicy bit of information that's going to keep him elevated in his position and have people happy with him.
And that makes so much sense to me in this larger scope of this universe. If she is a scribe who could be in the capital and she is in this very small town, access to information be something she would long for, right? She used to be in the place with the big library and all the information and everything that mattered, right? And now it's just small town gossip. And two guys show up and say, we have some really important information. She's going to go, I get to be the owner of this information and the one who shares it with my mayor husband. And so that could be an interesting dynamic. Okay, well, let's leave it there. That's a good place to stop. So now they've found an ally in going to see the mayor, and Zill's found a potential friend. So that's a good place to stop. So we'll take a break. We'll go to our commercial break. But when we come back, we're going to ask you what you've been daydreaming about lately. NotAPipePublishing is excited to announce our huge summer sale. Everything on our online store is 25% off. Let's face it, it's hot. So read a great book in the shade, wear a new shirt to the barbecue, sport the merch, and save. Share this with all your bookish friends. bit.ly/NAP store. bit.ly/N, lowercase a, capital P, lowercase store.
Fascist purges always begin with books. If you can't imagine a better future, you'll never fight for one.
At a time when oligarchs and politicians are trying to divide us, to scare us, to silence us, it's more important than ever to speak up, even when it sometimes feels like screaming into the void.
Celebrations of established foundations all of a sudden screeching, discordant, as the preachers become ignored by the God they adore, pathetic and
Anti-fascist literature is
and the
one way
mumbling
we
their
fight
last
back against the
years.
rising tide of hatred and ignorance that seeks to drown the sparks of empathy, community, and curiosity that are the birthright of all human beings.
And then maybe you understand. Never let them silence your voice. Never let them push you down. And never forget that your mommy loves you with every
Through our
fiber.
stories and poems, we articulate our love for each other, our desire for justice, our need for freedom, and our determination to make a stand.
The seductive depths of the ocean are more appealing than physical contact with either of them. A mental stream of David Attenborough narration carries her through the awkwardness. Here, the larger of the two apex
Volume 1,
predators
the
demonstrates
Antifa Lit Journal, begins with Rachel A. Rosen's brilliant What If We Kissed While Sinking a Billionaire's Yacht, and takes the reader on a journey through rage, fear, and despair to a place of grace, hope, and motivation.
Fascists are like bindweed and blackberry in the garden. You can't eradicate them, but if you stay on top of your weeding, you can keep them from taking over.
By itself, it's not enough, but no single effort is. We must come together and embrace one another.
Media. The Enriquez kids came to my daycare until their dad got disappeared, Dolores said. Where were the signs and the singing when my brother died?
Protest, boycott, strike, demand your representatives do more, protect the vulnerable, and support the people who are fighting alongside you through their
The
art.
kind who sits comfortably where evil meets idiocy and drinks up what he's fed through tubes painted red like the doors of those they tell us are better off dead.
Back our Kickstarter and help us make the Antifa Lit Journal into the kind of community that will outlast the current fascist regime. Fight fascism with your voice while you still can.
Welcome back, everybody. So we're here with author E.K. Wise, and we wanted to ask you what you've been daydreaming about lately.
Well, a lot of the things that one of the things I do as I was starting to market the book and wanting to also reach out to people regarding environmental sustainability issues is on my social media, my TikTok and my Instagram. I do something called various little posts, but one of them is called What's in Our Stuff. And the first one that I did as an example is I looked at Pepto-Bismol. And I wish I had it with me upstairs in my room somewhere. And the fact that there's a teeny tiny bit of bismuth in Pepto-Bismol from the periodic table. And so just a sense of, I feel like as we all globally go about our lives and we use whatever stuff that we use and we go buy something and open the bottle and use it and then hopefully recycle it if we can, we kind of forget where it comes from. Yeah. Like these things come from the earth and they're mined. And we use them up and we need to make sure that we're doing it in a sustainable way. And it's just, once again, being mindful of, okay, let's remember to take care of our earth and steward it. And so my daughter, who's at the University of Chicago, as a holiday present, she gave me these samples of rare earths, which I love. So I'll often, pick them up.
You don't have the entire periodic table because you don't have any uranium or plutonium.
Correct. The safe one. And then I went on online as my own little Mother's Day gift and got myself the rest of the safe elements of the periodic table. As you can see, I really love them. So, and I profile them a lot in my book.
Oh, yeah.
So, so I'll try to always come up with new novel things that I can discuss. And if anybody has any ideas, if you guys have any ideas or anybody else listening to the podcast, please go to my website and let me know, because I'd love to get more ideas on what's really cool.
Well, that was something we wanted to ask you about. Where can folks make that connection with you online? That I think would be a good part to plug right now. Where
sure.
can they find you on, both your website and what's your social media handles? How can folks connect with you?
Yeah, it's ekwise.com. That's my website. And then on TikTok and Instagram, it's e.k.wise, WISE.
Yeah.
So that's how you find me. And some of them are goofy. And the one that was the most popular, of course, is when my daughter came on there with me and talked about titanium and other really cool stuff. She's a biochemistry anthropology major. Cool. So that was a lot of fun.
I'll have to check that out myself. I find that interesting. Yeah. But I saw one of yours about, I'm trying to remember what. It was a very common stone, granite maybe, and it was an interesting one too. So folks should absolutely check that out.
The one that it was a lot of fun was we had to have our pool resurfaced. That's
what it was. Yes.
Yes. And so I looked at it when it was empty and I thought, well, wait a minute, this is cement. And I got down in there and really looked around and could see like little rocks and pebbles in there. And I thought, this is super cool. And cement is really, really old. I mean, even before the Romans, we've been using it and we're continually using it. It's one of the most important substances in our lives right now. In fact, I think I listened to a movie podcast or it's not a podcast. It is a discussion weekly on movies that are coming up or that have just been announced. I think there's actually a new movie coming out that's all about concrete in some sense, which is cool. And, it's sort of like an ode to concrete, just standing beside my empty pool. But,
I remember reading, and this was years ago, but I remember reading that they were rediscovering an advantage of Roman concrete over the concrete we use now. Mm-hmm. Our concrete does not last that long. It eventually breaks down. And yet you go to see what's the temple called in Rome? It looks like marble, but it's made of concrete. Their concrete has lasted to this day. And so scientists were looking at that and saying, what is the chemical composition which allowed for their concrete to last for 2,000 years, whereas ours starts to break down after a few hundred years? And they found that it
leaches. Are you thinking of the Colosseum?
Not the Colosseum. No. The across from the fountain, what's the famous fountain that we went to?
The Trevi Fountain.
Right across from the Trevi Fountain is it's not called the Acropolis.
It's not the Acropolis. That one's up.
You know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
And you see this building and it looks relatively modern, and yet it has been there for 2,000 years, and it's because the way
it's an old. It was a church
Well, they then made it into a church. Yeah, the
It was
Christians
something before
preserved
that.
it by making it into a
Yeah.
church, but it had been their temple
Yeah.
of Zeus. And the concrete, their concrete, when it cracks, leaches limestone in a different way than ours does, and fills in those cracks and actually becomes more dense over time. So
Oh,
we don't know that the Romans fully understood that, but they actually had a recipe for concrete that was better than ours. And we're now rediscovering, oh, this is why theirs lasts so long.
Well, isn't that the one that they leave the holes in intentionally?
Yeah, and
Yeah, so they leave
over time intentionally.
like particularly within the Colosseum, you could see as they're excavating along the sides and these big walls, they have big holes cut out, and it looks like there's just
Oh,
like
no,
a.
that's different. That
Is
was
that different?
that's a different thing. These are tiny, tiny microscopic cracks.
So which one's the
that
big
fill-
hole then?
The holes were so that they could later put in,
No. She explained it very clearly to us.
I don't remember this.
That was the day that you went to the airport to pick up the lost luggage.
Ah, that's right.
So
Okay.
they intentionally leave empty spots within it. And as water comes through and it starts to crumble, it naturally fills up those
Oh, yeah,
spots
that's
and
it. Yeah, yeah.
expands and creates like
Makes it
fixes
soft.
any slight cracks that are starting to happen. So they intentionally leave flaws within
So they must
the
have known
buildings
about
so
this
that they
leach.
will then refill themselves.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. It was, it's a chemical process within the stone. So, but
That
I love that video about the pool, and that way of kind of seeing the world, I think, is really healthy. Like, because you are a writer who has taken this on, then you're looking at your own pool being worked on and you're like, look at this. So folks should go check out that video.
Yeah, my knowledge of the study of geology is very, very limited to that.
A trip to Rome.
To Hank Green
Yeah.
and to watching a TikTok video from somebody who was studying geology at college, and they asked people in the video, like, what do you think the most common thing that we use when we study geology is? And then reading all these answers and this person coming back and going, no, we lick the rocks. That's how we study
They
them.
actually they use all their senses. So they
And of course,
what
my
sound it
ADHD,
makes, and they lick the rock too.
my ADHD had a moment where I was like, "Ooh, that sounds like fun. I could do that."
How dare you lick rocks? Yes.
Very careful about which rock
I
you're
was going to
choosing
say
to
that,
lick.
yeah, that's not a
Yes,
way to
definitely.
test certain things. One of the things I love about, my geology trivia is we see in movies all the time people fall into lava,
Yeah.
and the lava is so dense, it doesn't matter how liquidy it is still more dense than you are. You could walk on it. And so there is no
Not for very long.
Yeah, you would burn, but you wouldn't sink in. It's just a misunderstanding of density. We assume a liquid, therefore a solid is going to pass into it, but not if it's more dense. It's just going to stay
You
on.
wouldn't even get that far. All of those fumes and noxious
Yeah, then
gases.
you die.
Wait
Right. Exactly. Yes.
So what's something about your writing career that listeners should be keeping an eye on or an ear out for, depending on how they're watching?
Yes, might be more appropriate.
Oh, well, my audiobook is coming out soon, which I'm so excited about. Probably before the end of the month. Marion Hussey has narrated it, and she is phenomenal. The other thing about my book, I said it's very international. So there are a lot of characters from around the world, both the young and the adults, the students and the teachers, and the other side characters. And so there's a lot of foreign accents in there. So I needed a narrator who could really navigate and do all of those really well. And she does it beautifully. I was so excited to be
Getting
able to
the right narrator, that's wonderful. Because getting
So
the right
that's
narrator makes a big
out.
difference, doesn't it?
And then the other thing is, I love my cover, and I had a friend design it for me. But this is one of those things where a first-time writer, I didn't think to look and see what typical YA covers look like in fantasy. So when you narrow this down onto a little tiny thumbnail, it doesn't really do it justice. So we have a new cover coming out, and it's very, very exciting and very cool. So that will be coming out. We'll start teasing it probably within the next couple of weeks. So I'm very excited about that. And then I'm getting ready to write the second book in the series because we left it at a cliffhanger. The students learned something about their their keeper teachers, and that they weren't aware of. And so that's going to kind of take off from there, and lots of new adventures for them.
I totally hear you on the cover art. There, I mean, if somebody goes to the Not a Pipe Publishing website and they kind of scroll down chronologically, they will see our covers have gotten better and better and more professional over time because you just don't know at first. I did read a book on cover design, and one of the points that the author made, he said, if I could, if you forget everything else in this book and only remember one thing, it's make the title bigger because so many of us, when we're starting off, make these titles that are small, and then when it's a tiny thumbnail on Amazon, it's not visible. So yeah, making
Absolutely.
the title enormous is part of the learning process. This is what we're learning.
Yes, I have learned so much this first time around, so and continue to do so. So
Yeah,
we
well,
always
that is, but it is exciting to have that coming down the pike. You've got the new cover coming, and the audiobook is so cool. That will be really, that'll be a cool experience for you to get to listen to it. I remember for one of mine, the narrator that we got was so excellent, and the book is told from the perspective of a 17-year-old, high school student and a young woman, and so I clearly could not be the reader. I would be the wrong person. So we got this narrator, and she did such a marvelous job that when I was listening to it, I was like, this is really good. And like I was disconnected from it. And then I was like, oh yeah, I did write these words. But she made it something better. So that I think you will really enjoy that experience.
It's so dynamic, and so many people are choosing to read their books through listening, which I think is great because, as we talked about, with people learning in different ways, and we're all so busy in our lives that sometimes that's the best way for us to read a book. And I think some recent research just came out saying that listening to an audiobook, you retain just as much
Yeah.
and can focus just as much than
They had in that study because that's not me. He does
well,
audiobooks.
and
He can be in his office working on other stuff and listening to a book. I cannot do an audiobook unless it's a book that I'm like very, very familiar with. I get too distracted.
just different. It's a different kind of reading.
Yeah.
And I can't do anything that involves text while I'm hearing an audiobook. As soon as I read something, I'm an auditory reader. And so as soon as I read something, the voice in my head of the text that I'm reading gets in the way of the text that I'm supposed to be listening to. But I can do things like mow the lawn and do the dishes and all that. But as soon as, I mean, literally, I'll come across something and go, oh, that caught my eye and has text. Now I have to go back in the book because I lost it. So learning to, in the same way we need to learn to read written text, we need to learn how to read audio text. It still involves reading skills.
I can do an audiobook if I'm taking like a long drive.
Yeah.
If it's a book I've already read. It can't be a
That
new
makes sense.
It can't be a new book. It just I can't, my mind wanders far too easily.
Yeah, well, and that's probably as you are reading a physical book.
Oh yeah,
your
yeah,
mind
yeah.
wanders.
Yeah, my eyes will read a page 3 times and my brain has not read any of it.
Yeah, and then you can go back. Whereas with audio,
Yeah.
that's a little trickier. So
Yeah,
it's developing those skills, those reading skills, I think, still valid.
that happens to me a lot.
I forget. So, but if I have an audiobook, I forget that I'm supposed to be reading. If I have a book in my hand or the Kindle in my hand,
That makes sense.
I know the task that I'm supposed to be doing is reading.
Yeah.
But if my headphones are in and I'm listening to something, my brain just goes, you're just listening to something. And it's no different than music. I forget that the task I'm supposed to do is actually
Well, and some
reading
of my students would
absorbing the information.
Yeah, and some of my students would listen to music while reading text, and some would not. And I think that's valid too. So, learning what works for you. These are all valid forms of reading, and learning what works.
We got stuck on an 8-hour flight, 10-hour flight from Rome to New York a couple years ago. And we were 2 rows behind a woman with 2 toddler twin girls that cried, like 2-year-old, 2-year-old that cried the entire flight. And I don't begrudge that poor mother, and the father was sitting 1 row back and across the aisle from them.
Not being helpful.
We're not going to talk about that.
Okay.
But it was, my ADHD, my overstimulation was already hyped up because it was the end of a 2-week vacation. And so I was already, and then you get on an airplane for 10 hours. And my stepson at one point looks over and I am reading a book. I'd picked up, what was it? Circe which was fun because I was reading it in the same place as the story takes place, which was fun. But I was reading a book and then I had my headphones in and I was listening to an audiobook that was an entirely different book. And I could read the book just fine.
I see. I can't do that.
But the voice in the audiobook, it's one of my favorite books is The Divine Comedy. And I found an audiobook version of it that the narrator has this incredibly deep British voice. And it's this perfect, like, deep timbre that was, I could crank it up and it drown out the babies screaming.
Dante's Inferno.
But I've read The Divine Comedy so many times that I don't, it literally plays like it's music. Like and Noah looks at me like, you're reading a book and listening to it. How are you doing either of those? And I was like, I don't know. It's just, yeah. Dante's Inferno is when I'm overstimulated and I need to shut out the world. That's the thing I listen to.
Oh, I couldn't.
Just
definitely
weird.
do that. So, speaking of reading, what are some things that are on your to-read pile that you're looking forward to?
Oh, yes. So I do. I have some books. I'm getting ready to go on where am I going? To a reunion on my dad's side. So I have some books ready and I'm taking with me Woman in Suite 11 by Ruth Ware. Because I love a good mystery. I like a lot of people, eclectic reader. And then next on the list is Deanna Raybourn's Kills Well with Others. And she's phenomenal. I love her. And then I also have to do Diane Galbaldon's A Breath of Snow and Ashes, because my husband and I are huge Outlander fans. And I've thankfully been able to be in Scotland over the years several times. And just the way she describes Scotland, it just makes she does such an amazing job, and we love that series. So I'm behind on the book, so I've got to fit that. So those are all on my list right now to read.
I've been trying to see if we could plan a trip to Scotland, maybe even this fall, because we live in Spain. We're not as far as we once were. And it's a couple of days, and I think it would be really wonderful. But I should read that first. I was just telling my son today to read a book set in Barcelona because he's going to come visit. So I encourage folks, if you're going to go travel, read a book set in the place. It kind of gives you a little extra feel when you're like, oh yeah, I've experienced this, but fictionalized before arriving.
Yeah, it just kind of gives it a little more emphasis that you really kind of delve into it in a sort of a, I don't know, three-dimensional way, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, when we did our Rome, Italy, Greece, Turkey trip, those are all places that I'd read about.
Oh, a ton.
My whole life. Went through a massive Greek mythology phase.
Yeah.
Still.
And then the modernizations of Greek myths.
Yeah. Which was very fun seeing the places and that. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I've read stuff set in Scotland already.
Oh yeah, you're prepared.
I'm prepared.
But I should read the Galbaldon series because I know those are very popular, and that's one that I have not checked out yet. So I should read those.
So we always ask, who else should we have on this show? Feel free to, or even better if it's somebody that you know.
Oh gosh, I wish that it would be somebody that I know, and I'm going to pick somebody that's very well known, but I think she would be amazing. Ali Hazelwood. Who was initially from Italy. I think she'd be phenomenal. I think she'd have a lot of great things to say. And, she is also just freaking brilliant. She has a PhD in neuroscience and then writes romance, which I think is incredibly cool. And she fits science into each one of her books. And you can tell she really knows her stuff because she really gets involved. So I think she'd have a lot of important things to say and would be an interesting person to have.
Yeah, that's a great rec.
Cool.
Ms. Hazelwood, if you are listening to this show, reach out to us at NotAPipePublishing@gmail.com and we'll get you scheduled. I think that's a great pick.
Yeah.
So before we get to our send-off, there's some folks I need to thank. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song, I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3 Ds. And thanks to the author Stephen E. Scribner, author of the Taunt Fantasy series, who also makes music under the name S. Eric Scribner. And he gave us the song A Poem for from his album Pianosphere. We used that during the ad break. If you make music and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's or Stephen's songs, so email me about that. Thanks to Doug, the producer, for making the show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. Doug, we always appreciate that. And I cannot forget to mention, Writers Not Writing is a production of Not a Pipe Publishing. So please go to NotAPipePublishing.com, check out the amazing books written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much. And if you like this show, rate and review it wherever you found it. Please go check out EKY's the title of the book again is, and hold that up.
It is
Remind
Keepers of the Rock, The DEBILIS Rising.
Yes.
Book 1 in the series.
And
young adult fantasy.
Yes, and when you read it, give it, take the moments. It will only take you 30 seconds. Give it that 5th star and let EKYs know why you liked it. That really, really helps. And similarly for the show, you see that little thumbs up button on your podcasting app or on YouTube. Click on that an odd number of times if you would. We would really appreciate it.
And I just want to add, I have nothing against Romancy and other books like that. They're wonderful and they have a fabulous place, but this is clean. That's why I said it's from 10 to 100. So it's a perfect book for, tweens or even 10-year-olds. It's exciting, adventurous, but it's a lot of fun and it's got a lot of cool history and science in it. Just cool.
Yeah, well, and if you've got that kid, somebody is listening right now who's going, I have that kid who's, 10 years old and super into science and would love a novel like that. So if you are listening and you know that kid, this is, and then the great thing about that age is with a book like this, you and your kid can both read it. It's a great way to connect with your child. So read what your kids are reading. It's never bad to read the same books as your kids, and then you can discuss them. This one would be perfect for that. So we want to give folks kind of some advice as they go into their week, something to remember. I've been saying to folks, reminding people all writing is political, speaking is political, and choosing not to speak or use your voice through your writing is also a political act. It maintains the status quo. So I encourage you, use your voice in a way that makes the world a better place. And Chrys, what's your advice for everybody?
I'm going to go a little different this week because we've been talking about ADHD. So my advice for people this week is drink some water, take your meds, and go have a little snack.
That's good advice. And how about you? What's your advice for everybody?
Well, I would say going back to when you are inundated with all sorts of news and information, or when you're searching for stuff, make sure you look for valid sources. As I said, we all need to think about Augie and do the best we can. I know Ground News I love because and Randy Rainbow, I think, does a great job of highlighting it, but they often fact check stuff. So if you're unsure, you can always, go about and check to make sure things are accurate and that you know the people who's speaking it and where they're getting their information. So we can be a little less confused and a little more informed, I guess.
Here's a tiny bit of our bonus segment. Become a member of my Patreon and you can get the whole thing with no ads.
The bigger thing that I'm also concerned about, which because I've talked to so many parents, whether you're in private school or public school, and sometimes private school, it's worse, is getting the accommodations that your kiddo needs. And thankfully, our school now, I'm so proud of it. It has like a learning center. And so my kid can go to the learning center to be able to take her exams or her quizzes. So she gets quiet and she has the extra time that she's allowed. But all of that takes money, right? You have to have a separate place. You have to have the staff. And at this same school, and my oldest one was there, they didn't have it. So it was really tricky and they actually fought us. We had to bring in like an outside person as to assist us with getting them to give us the accommodations he needed, because that meant, well, is he going to stay later in the classroom after that teacher's done and gets the extra time, but then another teacher's coming in, and they had to kind of cobble it together and stick them in an office. It was crazy, but sometimes as a parent, you have to be brave. Yeah. And you might even need some outside people to come help you just to get the school to give you what you need. Or sometimes the schools will be amazing. And now I feel like our school's really good about that, but it just depends on where you live, the state that you're in, the country that you're in, and hopefully you'll get the resources that you need. But we have to advocate for our kids. And
your kids are lucky that they have you advocating for them, because not all
kids,
not all neurodivergent kids have that parent.
Yeah, but I will say for international folks, one of the challenges in the American system is the public schools are legally obligated to provide those services, but are sometimes starved of resources.
Yeah.
So if you're a parent with your kid in public schools, really you're involved in a political fight, whether
Yeah.
that's with your local school district or with your state or with now the feds who are going to be withholding a lot of money
Yeah.
to say, hey, you need to funnel these funds to the kids who need them. But then private schools, some of which are wonderful for kids who are neurodivergent, they don't have the same legal obligation. And so when you hear about things like vouchers, well, that's pulling money from the schools that have to, but might not be able to,
Yeah.
and giving them to schools that might choose not to, because the private schools can just go, we don't offer those services, and that's the end of the story.
That's where it can be tricky for sure.
Yeah, so that the voucher model is a really dangerous one because it could cause it could disenfranchise neurodivergent kids in both places. You're taking away the resources from the one place that ought to and has to, and putting the kid in a place where the school may choose to go, no, we'll pocket that money. It's the American system is not great for neurodivergent kids for a host of reasons. I mean, funding your schools based on zip code is a terrible model. Of course, you get the best schools in the wealthiest areas. In Europe, it's the exact opposite. The schools that are in the poorest neighborhoods get the most resources, which just makes the most sense, right? And the U.S. patchwork is kind of bizarre. But yeah, if you're a parent, I encourage parents to be like you, advocate for your kid, because especially in the public schools, they have to. They just have to figure out how to find that money.
Well, and you're
Or
going
look
to
at your community for support if you're not aware. And I happen to be a clinical social worker, so I have avenues of education that helps me understand this more. But if you don't, hopefully in your community you've got either other parents who are familiar with this or organizations that can help you, so you're not alone. There is somebody that can help you and hold your hand and help you get your kid what you need.
Well, and as a parent, you are the one that is teaching your child how to advocate for themselves.
Right.
Oh,
You're-
yes.
You're doing one of two things. You're doing what you are doing for your kids, which is teaching them how to be an advocate for themselves. Or you do what my
And
mom
others.
did.
You're modeling how to be an advocate for others too, which
Yeah.
is an important thing to show all of our
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah, because when they get to college, it's on them. So
Right.
and
Yeah.
but yeah, and so
Well-
and that's another example is I've got this kiddo who's a biochemistry and anthropology major at University of Chicago, which is a very intense school, and she's got her ADHD and attentive type, and she's got her medication and her anxiety stuff, and she is thriving and loving it. So
Has she found, not to invade her privacy at all, but has she found that she needs any kind of accommodations in school, and have they been receptive to that, or maybe she doesn't need it?
incredibly receptive. Yep, she gets a little extra time, and they're wonderful. They've been very helpful. There's been no problems with, and most colleges, I understand, universities are very good about that.
I think so. Yeah, I think universities tend to be
Which is great.
a little more sensitive to the fact that they need to recognize that if they're going to be successful institutions in a competitive.
Well, and it's how a university approaches teaching